Typically, on a yearly basis, about 90% of the world's disasters are related to climatic conditions. So obviously the climate is affecting the way people live in many areas of the world, and when these climatic conditions are being degraded or are being modified, well, of course, it induces people to move. So this is a very broad and encompassing concept and really touches upon many different types of population movement worldwide. Some are forced to migrate as a result of degrading climatic conditions. Some others are choosing to migrate voluntarily as a way to adapt to these changing conditions. And we need to realize that climate-induced migration can mean all of that. Policymakers have traditionally considered that people would move either for political reasons or for economic reasons. And now we realize that an increasing number of people are also on the move because of environmental reasons. And here we face a gap in research, a gap in policymaking, and a gap in normative frameworks. So this is the reason why it is important to address, because this is definitely an increasing reason why people are moving worldwide, and the numbers keep increasing year after year. And the policy framework is not right, the legal framework is not right, the research framework is not right either. So we have a lot to catch up on. Because we've done a lot of stuff completely wrong in the past. So this is very important to learn from these lessons of bad migration management. But at the same time, there are also a lot of policies that countries are doing right, and they need to learn from each other. And typically, migration policies is a field when countries have a hard time to collaborate together. It is still felt that migration policies has to do with sovereignty or national identity. So states are actually very reluctant to coordinate their policies or to collaborate with each other. It is much easier for states to collaborate on climate policies, for example, than on migration policies. And yet there are a lot of things that they can learn from each other on migration policies. And there are lots of solutions that will be bilateral or regional solutions that will need to be implemented through a collaboration between a cluster of states. Well, a policy that works quite well, for example, that's the migration agreement that New Zealand has with some Pacific states. These migration agreements allow some citizens of Pacific neighboring countries to come and work in New Zealand. It is in the best interest of New Zealand, because New Zealand is a country that is short of workforce. It is also in the best interest of the Pacific neighboring countries, because by moving to New Zealand temporarily, by working in New Zealand, they can send remittances to their families, to their communities, to build up adaptation options and to build up adaptation projects. So this is an example of a migration scheme that works in the best interest of both the sending countries and the receiving country. I believe it is extremely important that we reach a kind of scientific consensus as a research community on these issues so that we can make policy progress. Typically, when we talk to policymakers, we hear that, that research is not mature enough, that we need more data, that we need more numbers. At some point, it is important to come together and to share these data and these numbers so that we can have a kind of consensus of what is the state of climate-induced migration today and what needs to be done, and present these results to policymakers.